This episode is brought to you by nvdhemp.com. So let's talk CBD for a minute. It's all over the news, and there are so many PGA Tour players using it, such as Phil Mickelson and Bubba Watson, to name a few, but there are many others, and now some top teachers, including myself, are taking advantage of this amazing product. But what is it exactly? Short for cannabidiol, CBD is a chemical compound from the cannabis plant. It's a naturally occurring substance that's used in products like oils and roll-ons to impart a feeling of relaxation and calm and to reduce inflammation as well. Now, it doesn't get you stoned, but it has many organic rejuvenating effects. One of my favorite brands is Enveed. Their CBD products come in 3 varieties: Relief, Clarity, and Relax. Relief CBD products help relieve pain and those sore muscles. Clarity allows you to focus on those critical shots or whatever the task is at hand. And Relax CBD products are for those anxious golf moments or those moments in your life when you just need to take the edge off. I would not endorse any product that I didn't use personally, and I can tell you that I've been testing this stuff for over a month now, and it's a game changer. I take a drop of Relax right before bed, and it's helped me get some of the best sleep that I've had in years, which for those that know me, I'm up all the time with a busy mind, so it's really helped, and I feel so much better in the morning after just getting some deep REM sleep for a change. I also take a drop of the Clarity in the morning with my coffee to kind of get my day started, which is giving me an alertness and a focus that I have never experienced in my life. It's just unbelievable. I also use the roll-on for some sore muscles and joints after a run or a workout. Right now, I have an incredible offer for you. Go to nvdhemp.com and use the promo code GURU20, that's GURU and the number 20, for a 20% discount for life. You heard it right, 20% discount for life. Go check it out. I'm telling you, it's a game changer in golf and in your life. Now let's get to this week's episode.
It's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
You know how to cut to the core of me, Baxter. You're so wise. You're like a miniature Buddha, covered in hair.
I want to become a guru so girls will like me. Then I will like myself.
Now, before we do this, let's go over the ground rules. Rule number 1. No touching of the hair or face.
Of course.
And that's it! Now let's do this!
What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Golf Guru Show. I'm Jason Sutton, and I'm the Guru, where it is my mission to interview the top golf instruction minds in our business, break them down, and get them to share all of their stories, best practices, and information that have made them great and successful, then ultimately share it with you so we can all get better at teaching and coaching this crazy game. Make sure you download this episode and hit the purple subscribe button so you don't miss any future shows that will be coming your way. My guest on this episode is none other than Scott Hamilton. You can follow Scott on Instagram at Scott Hamilton Golf. Scott has one of the largest stables of PGA and LPGA players on the planet. His students include Boo Weekley, Stephen Bowditch, Chris Kirk, Aaron Baddeley, Brendan Todd, Joe Durant, Ben Martin, Russell Henley, Hudson Swafford, Scott Stallings, and then now Harold Varner and Peter Yoline, Cheyenne Woods and Vicky Hurst, and a ton of college players and juniors as well. So you kind of get the idea that this guy's worked with a ton of great players, obviously. I met Scott about 5 years ago at a TrackMan University seminar that I hosted at my club and have been following his work ever since. He is the head professional at Cartersville Country Club in Georgia when he's not on the road with his tour players, which is a lot of weeks during the year. I think he said like 52 weeks he's traveling, which is insane. I love talking to Scott because, as all top coaches, he really pays attention to patterns and ideas that work and then makes them really easy to understand. And most of you that have spent time with Scott know that he is very entertaining and is a great storyteller as well. So don't let the Southern accent fool you. This guy is super smart, and I hope you will enjoy this wide-ranging conversation where we cover a lot of cool stuff from pressure mapping to gears to what he is working on with his players that I know you're going to love. Oh, and we also get into a few self-development ideas at the end. Like I said, don't let the accent fool you. This guy is really, really smart. So give it up for the brilliant and always entertaining, my friend, Mr. Scott Hamilton. Enjoy. All right, Scott, welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, finally.
Yeah. We had a few technical difficulties for somebody that's technically advanced like yourself. I thought it would be easier.
I kind of am. I mean, honestly, like, if I didn't have Mike Renato help me, I could never get the gears turned on, so let's not completely lie.
You got a lot of cool toys anyway.
Yeah, I got all of it. Or the bulk of it, for sure.
Exactly. All right, so I wanted to start, with your story because everybody knows you at this point. You're no longer under the radar because we met about 5 years ago. I think you came and did a TrackMan U seminar at my club and then realized how many tour players you were teaching. So what happened before then? Like, how did we get there?
I started out as the head pro at Cartersville Country Club, when I was like 28, I think I got the job. And I just built a teaching building before everybody else, just mostly because I was going broke because I owned the pro shop and I needed to pay the Titleist invoices. So, I just got teaching and, I got a couple really good breaks. I mean, I was a decent club pro teacher. And, I taught, because the facility that I built nobody else had, then I got all the best junior players around because I had the first indoor hit out, some technology, took a couple cameras, which is a lot of technology like in 95.
Back in those days. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I kind of got, I don't know if they came because I had a cooler setup than everybody else or I knew something, but, then I kind of got rolling on that. And then I got a couple breaks. I had some really good players in my club. My club has a really low handicap players, so I had this kid, Bryant Odom, that ended up being a really good player at Georgia. He's the head coach at Kennesaw State now. And then I had, about the same time, Jason Bone moved to town. He graduated from college and married a girl that's father or stepfather was a member of the club. And, I helped him up through getting on tour and through his wins on tour. So
that was your first guy, right?
That was my first. Yeah, my first. When I was still the club pro. And I see guys show up on tour like that occasionally, where they have the one guy they've taught forever, and he runs in and get his tour card. And I always try to be nice to those guys because I remember how out of place I felt when I was that dude.
Yeah.
So I kind of had those breaks and got me going, and then probably the thing that really, because I had some credibility because I was teaching a guy on tour. That helps every other aspect of getting other players around. But probably the biggest deal that really got me rocking was whenever Cleveland and Shrixon bought Cleveland. They had two, and I'd got to be friends with Rob Waters from being on the PGA Tour. Mm-hmm. And they had two tour vans for the web tour or whatever it was then, buy.com maybe. I don't remember what name it was at that point. Not the cornhole tour like it is now. So they moved one of those trailers and fit mini tour players and a few occasional tour guys that show up there. And I mean, it was like, so I'm down on the end of the range. I got a little bit of credibility, and I got every decent mini tour player that played Cleveland stuff coming to my. And you know how it is. I mean, you're a teacher. A mini tour player, he'll listen to anybody, man. Like,
that's right. Yeah.
I mean, they're not. If you're down there and they're struggling, and you'll tell them something, they'll bite. So that's where I kind of picked up Lee Williams and Will Claxton. I met Boo down there. Bowditch, that's how I got going, which Bowditch is probably the most important guy for me that I ever taught. Still super tight with him just because he was the first guy, like, he was when he got his tour card like in 2009 or 10, and he's the guy where I'm like, all right, I'm going to go do this because I had Jason Bone and Bowditch at that point, and that was when I'm like, okay, enough of running the member guest. I'm just going to go give it a whirl because Bone always told me, he goes, and Bowditch told me, he goes, if you're out there and people know who you are, you're going to teach more people.
Right.
Well, I mean, I'm out there 35 weeks a year. I've been out there for years like that. If you're there and people know you, and it's just, you're going to teach people. And that's
Right.
kind of, I gave a bunch of my pay away at the club. I told the club I'm going to go do this. They still allowed me to stay and be the director of golf and go to meetings and be involved in the club. And they paid me a little bit and paid my health insurance. But I took a pretty good gamble and ran out there and got with it, and it's worked out for me.
Yeah, I remember when I first met you, and I was picking your brain. I was like, how do we get out there to teach tour players if you're interested in doing that? And you're like, man, I'm just out there, and I've got some answers, and I'm out there all the time. So eventually, you're going to start to get some guys to come up to you and start asking questions.
Yeah, I mean, and the more you're out there, I tell people all the time, it's like a traveling circus. I mean, it's literally the same 200 people every week in a different location. So,
sure,
like, I'm friends with all the club reps, so they give me recommendations. I'm friends with the agents. They give me recommendations. Every player you teach has 2 other guys he's boys with. Well, when they get struggling, you're the easiest guy,
Sure. What did you do prior to being at Cartersville? Like how'd you get up through the business?
I worked in Hilton Head. So there was a golf pro that gave me a pretty good piece of advice when I was a young guy, and I was talking about getting because I worked at a little 9-hole muni when I was a kid. I we had about 12 golf carts, and I washed the carts, and they were those Harley Davidson carts, and I'd water the batteries, and I'd hang out in the pro shop when the pro wanted to go play 9 holes, or it was just a little nothing golf course. But like, I had a guy give me a great, really good piece of advice. I told him I was going to get in the golf business, and the first thing he said is, "Don't do it." He's like, "Man, what are you doing?" He's like, "You're a smart guy." He goes, "Go do something where you don't have to work all weekend." And I'm like, "Nah, I think this is what I want to do." So he told me to work at some place that whenever I wanted to get a head pro job, that it would get my name on top of the pile. He said, go try to work at some famous place that everybody knows what it is. It'll help you so much get your first job. So
right.
My family was taking a vacation in Hilton Head about that time, and I went down and got an interview with John Farrell at the Plantation Golf Course. It was called then. It was in Sea Pines. There's Harbor Town. Then there's what they used to call when I worked there called the Plant Club, and it had 36 holes and played 110,000. Well, they just hired this young guy, John Farrell, to be the head pro there. This would have been about 88, 89, something like that. And I went down, and I was actually the first guy he ever hired. And I worked for him, and then in a couple months, he got moved over to Harbor Town, and then he was over there maybe a month or so, and then he moved me over there. So I worked a little bit at Sea Pines at this Plantation Club, and then he moved me to Harbor Town. I worked there about 2.5 years. And I went through the program the old school way, where it was you go to a hotel for a week and take a test and drink beer in the bar. Remember those days?
I did the same thing.
Yeah, it's like
business school 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, I mean, a guy could afford to do it then. It's expensive now.
For sure.
So I mean, so I did that 2.5 years there, and about 2.5 years at Hague Point, and then then I applied for a couple jobs, and this was about the second or third job I interviewed for was this little job at Cartersville, Georgia. I was in Hilton Head, and I looked it up on the map, and it looked like, because I'm from a small town, it looked like perfect. It's like this little small town, but it's across the street from a lake, and then there's 40 miles down the road's Atlanta. I'm like, man, this looks right for me. And I rode up here and hand deliver my resume, and the break I got there was the GM was about 35 years old, and I brought my wife with me on the first interview, and his wife had moved to town and didn't have any friends, and my wife and her hit it off. So hell, I think my wife got me the job.
It sounds like it. How old were you then?
I think I was 27 or 8 then at that point.
Wow.
That was 93.
93, yeah.
Yeah, I've
awesome.
been there. The only job I've ever had. So. I love the club, and it's just a cool old Parkland style country club, bunch of pickups in the driveway,
That's awesome.
So that's kind of how I navigated my way through the deal there.
So before we get into technique and your philosophy that we've talked about, I've seen you speak, and we've had some conversations about, like, How did you learn to teach? Like, who were your influences, and how did it sort of bring you to your philosophy now?
It's kind of when I was in Hilton Head, I kind of had a path. When I got down there, I remembered, that I got down there and looking around, and in those years, golf was, there were tons of people in the golf business down there that were in the apprentice program, and it was pretty hard to get a job. They thought it was. So I got looking around. I'm like, man, this isn't that complicated. I'm an adequate player. I've got some sense. Like, these guys keep telling me it's going to be real hard to get a job. And I'm like, man, I think this is kind of like going to be like cheating, So I tried to do the things I thought that would make me a better club pro. So I made a list of stuff that I thought I needed to be decent at. And, calligraphy, buying merchandise for a shop, just dumb stuff. But, you go interview, you're like, yeah, man, I can make a scoreboard, and I can. And one of the things on my list, it was 4 or 5 things, and one of them was be able to teach, And I was a decent player, nothing great, but I was a decent player, and I wanted to be a better player. So I just got on this deal where I went up and down Hilton Head Island and got a lesson from every guy. And there it was back in the stand out on the range, tell you hit out on it, or pre-TrackMan video, iPhone. I remember I was making $5.35 or $8 an hour. $5.35 when I started in tips, and then $8 an hour. And I'm paying $75 to $100 for a lesson then. And I'd leave there and go, oh my God, was that it? Like $100? I would rather bought beer at enchiladas than spend $100 on that. So I did that up and down Hilton Head. There were probably 15 teaching pros down there then, so I tried them all out, and I'm like, wasn't too impressed. And then I had a friend of mine, Oswald Droddy, that played golf at Clemson, and I didn't know many really good golfers. He was a really good golfer right out of college, and he told me about a guy in Atlanta. His name was George Killenhofer. So I got in my car and booked me a 30-minute lesson, and it was 30 minutes, and PGA Pro would charge me $25. I'm like, I'm already digging this,
Right.
So I rode up and got a lesson from George, and it was 30 minutes. I mean, it started on on the hour, and it ended. Bam, it was over. But the cool thing about it is the guy was the first time anybody that remembers George, he taught at Beaver Ruin Road at that old junky range, but he had great technology. He had a face-on down-the-line camera. He could draw lines on the TV screen. Like
the hotlines, right?
Yeah, well, that was later on. But,
it was later, okay.
Yeah, he had that Sony editing board, and he could draw lines, and he was a golf machine guy, and he talked about being on plane. And, I probably had 4 or 5 lessons from him over a course of a few years. I had maybe 1 or 2 after I moved to Atlanta. But he probably was the biggest influence on me. And not that I learned a ton from him about his technique, but I mostly learned about downswing playing and how to set a video camera up, because I think on my 25th birthday, my wife bought me one of those great big Sony video cameras. Remember how big them damn things were?
Oh, yeah.
But it was a Mini 8, but I mean, the thing was 1.5 feet long,
Yeah.
So she bought me one of those, and I'd got that lesson from George, and he'd showed me how to set it up on the elbow plane line. So I just started giving golf lessons to all the golf pros there, all my guinea pig buddies. So, and I kind of took that, and that's kind of how I got going, and that was the first thing I learned was the plane thing made sense to me. The club went around in a circle, and the shaft was pointed kind of on plane on the backswing, kind of affected the top of the swing and how the club came out of there. So that's kind of how I got going on that deal.
Yeah, because you've talked about a lot about how important the elbow plane is and how you teach off the elbow plane.
Yeah.
Is that kind of where that started?
Yeah, it's 100% where it started, and I mean, I've never varied from that much. If you look at that, there's a video, and I think Charles Howell might have shot that thing. See, babe. I think Charles Howell might have shot that. As my daughter just shot through the room there. And the dog jumped on the computer a second ago.
I saw that's all right. And we're still going.
But,
that's all right.
Those old Tiger Woods videos, Charles shot a real good one years ago, like in Tiger's heyday. And, I mean, if you draw an elbow plane line on it, like when the hands are going halfway through the body, the club's right on the plane line. And, I always thought golf was kind of, at a highest level, was played off speed. And it made sense to me that the club was on plane about the time your left arm was parallel and you made the club go more vertical, you could abbreviate your backswing and you're kind of set up to hit a straight shot was my basis idea. And, the more you teach, I've taught, don't know, 60 tour players, maybe more.
Right.
I mean, the guys, unless they're really unique, like a Wolf or, Furyk or somebody like that, I mean, they come in there, they swing it all over the elbow plane line, It's like, I remember talking to Tillery. Tillery was telling me a story about he was in an education thing, and the guy's like, there's no downswing plane. There's vectors that go this way and vectors that go that way, and there's, horizontal and vertical, and the club comes roughly down in between them. It's elbow plane line. It's where it is,
Yeah,
so
there's a little bit of a variance, but the spectrum's there.
I mean, guys, that you draw that line, and they're, if the camera's set up and the guy that's underneath it and it blows out to the right normally draws it, and he's over it and goes left and normally cuts it, so. And, I'm such a backswing guy because you just don't have enough time to do much on the downswing. And I always feel like if you kind of fix the backswing, you fix the top before change of direction. And then, the club kind of goes where it's going. Now, as I've, done better and been able to buy more technology, like I got a gears and, I've TrackMan and all that business and pressure mats. But you do see, that the club, and I tell people this all the time, the deal I have now is I mostly teach elite players. Like I don't really teach anybody that's not really, really good. So they show up and they kind of got the club. 9 out of 10 of them have the club going around them pretty good.
Yeah.
So it's literally, I do a whole lot more with the body because the club chases the body. So I'm normally working on the pelvis or the spine or how much the right leg's straightening just to get the club to exit where people want it to exit now,
Right.
As the evolution of, what I do and who I teach now, more than anything.
Yeah, and I definitely want to get into your gears stuff because you talked at our section teaching summit last year, and I thought you brought up some really good ideas of like what you've learned. But before that, I want to get back to the elbow plane and then the top of your swing. Something that I found interesting in your sort of, I guess, preferences is you want the club more laid off at the top with your players.
Yeah, I don't really ever want anybody across the line. That's hard to deal with because it opens the face on the downswing. Then you got to have a lot of face rotation at the hit.
Gotcha.
But guys that are laid off, man, I mean, I can deal with a laid off. I have a lot more success with that than I across the line. If you ever watch my players, I don't ever have anybody across the line.
Yeah.
Just because, that center of mass, if it kind of gets laid off and they shallow it a little bit, it's kind of begging that center of mass to swing out over the grip and square up and, most, like a guy like Hudson Swafford, he plays a fade. I made him one time too neutral at the top, took all the laid off out of there. Well, he got too draw bias.
I was going to say that's something that teachers have talked about. And what I've noticed is when they get across the line, it definitely has a tendency to dump under more, which is great for average players. Club guys, I can change their path pretty quick, but more laid off tends to get the shaft coming down a little more in front of them or less in to out. And that seems to be what you're talking about.
Yeah, 100%. If you get somebody laid off, the club basically is kind of more fade bias.
Sure.
My favorite golf swings, I'm sure I said it whenever you were in the room where I was talking. Mm-hmm. I like guys that are shallow to steep, and what I mean by that is I like if you swing the club out of there when the club starts coming out of the top, somebody like Boo or Sergio, if you draw a line right when it starts coming down the shaft, it's going to point over the ball. So that, to me, that's a shallow. And then their option, they're not going to keep swinging it on that plane and swing out over miss the golf ball. So then they're going to steepen it in the last bit of the golf swing, pull the handle down left, bow their wrist, and square the face. So, if I could have a preference of a golf swing, it'd be a shallow to steep,
Yeah, for sure. And I know you like that low handle position for driving.
Yeah.
As you always say, get that handle on the ground.
Yeah, I like it to go, and I want them to do it with not having a radius change. Like I tell people all the time, driving's pretty simple. It's, and you always, I was not a very good driver of the ball. So that's kind of what always fascinated me. I was a pretty good putter, so I really don't care about putting. Putting's boring, So, I tell people all the time, driving's not that complicated. If you do kind of 3 things with driving, you're going to be pretty efficient. One is you can't have a radius change. In other words, your pelvis can't come in underneath you and make your spine go into extension. There's not a lot of guys that drive it great like that. There's a few, but not a ton. Mm-hmm. When you get somebody that has a lot of driving problems, they normally show up and their pelvis is tucking underneath them. They're jumping up a bunch, humping it.
Yeah.
If you get the club roughly on plane, if it's coming down, it looks pretty good on the elbow plane. And then you get them set up at touch that the shaft comes in there at 90 degrees because, putters and drivers don't have any loft on them, and they're made to be delivered at 90 degrees or straight up and down at touch. If you can do those 3 things, they're going to be pretty efficient drivers generally. I mean, it's not going to be foul balls. So that's kind of where, when I get somebody that's struggling like I've had guys like Matt every year. I started teaching Peter Uline last year, and he's kind of struggling with his driver. I've just started teaching this Tiffany John girl on the LPGA. She was struggling with her driver. That's where I always start, and then you'll make adjustments. After I clean those 3 things up, then I'll if I still got problems, then I'll dig deeper in there,
Yeah, so when you say 90 degrees, that's like the opposite of a lot of forward shaft lean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, how do you teach somebody to get rid of the lag?
I never
like Varner's a little bit that way, right?
Oh, I have 2 guys that lean the crap out of it.
Well, Stallings, obviously.
Stallings and Varner, yeah. I mean, they got tons of handle drag. So those guys, what I do with them more than anything is I work on their setup. Like Harold's really wide. You see how wide Harold?
Yeah.
And it's all depends on where the low point of the left shoulder is at touch, So if you look at somebody like a Chris Kirk, his low point of his left shoulder is literally touching the back of the ball. If you draw a line straight up off at the back of the ball, the low point of his left shoulder is touching that ball because he's not leaning it. And if you look at Stallings or Harold, the low point of their left shoulder is probably 5-6 inches behind the ball, and that's what allows them to stand the shaft straight up and down at touch. So, with Harold, he gets wider. And with Stallings, he has so much lean, the ball's way forward, he's open, and he's not super wide, but way wider in his iron swings. So, we just adjust. And all those guys, anytime I'll put a video up on Instagram of Harold, they all want to ask me about his right foot drag.
Yeah, his footwork, yeah.
And the thing is, when a guy has that much lean, he's going to go into a whole bunch of right bend down there at the last minute, and his lead shoulder is going to go way high. Well, if you get him on a pressure mat, he's going to repressure his trail side foot. You can't keep from it and make the shaft go straight up and down. So, that's where, teaching one pressure trace on a pressure mat, something where, if Harold didn't have literally 80% of his load or Stallings on their right foot at touch with a driver, it'd be head high and fly off to the right every time because they'd have so much lean,
So how do you keep those guys hitting it great? What are you working on with Stallings to keep him hitting it well? Obviously he can hit the stinger.
Yeah, well, Stallings and that's the worst thing we ever do is people love to see that stinger.
Yeah,
but I mean,
you don't want him doing that.
We've worked really, really hard to make him hit 100 feet in the air.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've done that, and I've never been a guy that's tried to get the lag out of somebody's golf swing because I've never had any luck with it. That's where I taught Charles Howell that year, and he wanted to work on that, and I'm not good at that. So, I think that's why he and I parted ways more than anything, because I've never had any luck with somebody teaching them throw down there. I know a lot of people do it, but that's not what I'm good at. So I just try to work
So what's the
around
matchup? What's the matchup for those guys that have a lot of lean?
You got to get really open to get rid of some of the lean. You got to, all those guys play a way more forward ball position with every club. That helps the lean. They got to, and the trick is with those guys is teach them how to get over there on top of it and then right bend at the right time, And the problem with the leaner guys is they'll want to jump into right bend way too soon. And
they're trying to get some loft.
Yeah. And then they get blocked and everything else, So, that's one of the most challenging things to do is teach somebody with a whole bunch of lean. And like a problem with Stallings is, and what we work on him, honestly, we don't do a lot with his golf swing anymore. We just keep him with about a -1 club path on the driving range. Just try to keep the club, getting around him left. He likes to hit fades on the golf
get the handle
course.
Moving up and left a little bit more.
Yeah. But
makes sense.
But with him, the problem with him is he leans it. He has so much compression. Like he'll 5-0 smash a 6-iron. So here, the worst thing about that he struggles with is when he grabs a wedge and wants to take speed off of it. He'll swing it down there and slow the club head speed down, but then he'll shallow out and lean it a ton, so his smash factor goes through the roof. So he hits farther than when he's swinging at it hard. So we've worked on, Jeff Pierce and I and Stallings were at that Tennessee practice facility a couple days ago. And literally, we spent 5 hours working on different ways to work around that problem. Just for his distance wedge stuff. Because, he's a tour guy. You stand on the range and throw a TrackMan down, tell him to hit it. Hit his 9-iron 145 yards. He can do it. But you put him under the gun and the adrenaline gets going, then he hits an easy one and shallows it out, and the thing goes 155.
Oh wow!
So those are there's a whole bunch of that we do out on tour. I always laugh when I'm standing there on a tour range and I'm working on some guy's alignment or something, and the people standing back there think I'm teaching some kind of super complicated crap. And I'm like, hey, man, you might want to throw a alignment rod down there. You're lined up way right, So a lot of times it's the most basic golf lesson we give them on the road. They got a tee time Thursday. It's not like we're reinventing the wheel out there,
I was going to say, how much work are you doing during the week with guys? I mean, I know you're out there a lot, and I guess they come see you occasionally on off weeks, but you're doing some decent work out there, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I always kind of tell people on the road what we're really trying to do is calibrate guys. I know what every guy has his flaw, and I know what they are. So we're working around their flaws. Like a Stallings likes to get set up on his left foot. He'll get too much weight forward, get a zipper too up close to his left shoe. Get the ball back. That'll push the ball back for him. Then it makes him, the minute he gets the ball back, he gets a positive club path. So I'm balancing that all the time. With Harold, he likes to not shift over on top of it. You get like a short pressure shift and then hang and then go spin behind it instead of move on top of it and right bend later. I mean, each guy has their own little thing. Now, when you start teaching somebody new, like a Peter Uihlein, I worked hard on him on the road last year because he was so steep and I was trying to shallow him out a whole bunch.
Right.
And then, they all have preconceived notions on things they've done before that really they need to do, but I did that one time before and it didn't work. And, right. Well, you did part of it, you didn't do the whole thing. And so, and then figuring out the club face angle that works for a guy, and then helping them and not ruining the part they're good at. Where like Peter was such a great wedge player, and he kind of he likes an open club face on the backswing, and he's always kind of shallow. But then whenever he gets going with a driver, then he likes to jump over there on his left foot and straighten his right arm way too soon and steepen it a whole bunch out of the top. So it's kind of like working with what they got and trying to make the bad part better, but not ruin the stuff they're great at that keeps them out there.
Yeah. What are some of your go-tos that you tend to move towards to shallow somebody out? Because obviously that's a big hot topic in golf instruction now is, do you leave the hands back and do the pivot, or is there something happening with the arms? Or
yeah, most of the time I'm trying to shallow somebody out. I'm trying to get them more up on top of their left leg and get them some altitude with their pelvis. That's where I've had the most luck. Is like if we're going to talk about gears here in a little bit, but when you get a guy on gears, what happens basically is that they set up over it. They're pretty neutral in their knee joints and hip joints. They straighten the right leg. The right side of the pelvis goes up 16 to 20 degrees. They slide over on their left foot as the right side of the pelvis is up and the left one's down. In the downswing, they're using that angle and there's a ground force pushing you forward naturally right then. They slide over. About the time the lead arm's parallel on the downswing, they've leveled their pelvis back out. And then, around touch, their left pelvis is up 10 or 12 to 14 degrees. So the more you can push that left pelvis up and out of the way and back, it shallows them out. That's where I've had the most luck that's a usable thing.
And that's more obviously working with the body to sort of fix the club.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Which is what we do typically with better players.
100%. Yeah. But that's where I've had the most luck shallowing people out. A guy like Boo hits push draws, but he's, if you get him on TrackMan, he's about 8 down, but his swing direction will be like -1 or 2, so all the draws from the down.
Right.
And then he'll get somewhere and get super hammering down on it, and it's too much, So with him, I'll throw him in a fairway bunker because, he'll chunk it if he gets in there. And you put Boo in a fairway bunker, he'll level it out and get where he's, goes from 8 to 5 or 6, and he can manage that. If he's 5 down with a -1 swing direction, he'll have a positive club path and that little push draws. So
you kind of let him figure it out.
Calibrated
himself.
Yeah, with him, I've just taught him so long. I kind of know the things that work for him.
If you can get him to putt better, he
God,
should have won 10 times out there.
Oh my God, he'd have won so many times. It's interesting. Can I jump around and talk about whatever I want?
Absolutely, man. This is what it's about.
Boo was just in town, I don't know, 2 weeks ago and spent about 5 days at my house. And, he's striping it right now. He's just same with the putting business. And, he played in Houston and I think he finished 20th or something. And it's interesting, his perception, because he was like 8 or 10 strokes gained. He led a bunch of the hitting stats. Tee to green, he was like, I think he might have been even 10, but I know he's at least +8. And his putting was like -5. So I call him and I said, hey man, good playing. And he goes, yeah man. He goes, I hit it pretty bad, but he goes, I putted good. And I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, that's exactly, because my putt was okay. He goes, I didn't hit it very good. I'm like, dude, you led like every ball striking stat. I go, and you're like last in putting. Like he goes, well, it was like -5 at least. It might have been higher, So the thing with Boo is, and this is what you see on tour, like the worse a guy gets with his putting, the heavier and the shorter his putter gets. And then their stroke gets shorter, and and Pierce does a really good job of I talked to him about it, and he was telling me, he goes, guys like Boo and Stallings, it's like they're driving a Ferrari. Like the Ferrari goes 100 miles an hour into the back of the ball and whacks it, just like accelerates into it and wham, smacks the back of the ball. And then he goes, the best putters are driving a minivan. They get it up to about 60 miles an hour and drive through the ball, and then they slow down.
Yeah, they're cruising.
Yeah, so that acceleration profile is like, it's just rounded out right there through the hit.
It's very smooth, very constant.
Yeah, it's not just a boom right in the back of it. It's more of a cruisy little stroll through the golf ball. So right. I got thinking about that, and I thought, well, how can I help Boo with this? So I went down in
send him to Charlotte.
I went down in my I went down in my basement and I found a ping. And the thing about putters nowadays, putters weigh 200 grams more than they did when I was a kid.
Yeah, oh yeah, at least.
So I went down and found a Ping Zing putter, 35 inch. I wanted it longer, Ping Zing putter, and those things, I don't know what they weighed, probably 320 grams, back in those days. So I got this Ping Zing putter. And I put a big heavy grip on it so the head was really light on it. And like a big fat heavy grip on it. And I went and got a coat hanger. And I'd seen Dickie Pride take a coat hanger before and make a loop the size of a golf ball and stick it in the ground and put the ball in the loop because Boo moves all over on it. So I took this coat hanger and I stuck it in the ground. I put the ball in there where, 4 or 5 inches over the golf ball so he could see if his head was moving around because you could see the edge of the coat hanger moving around on the golf ball. And gave him that putter and gave him a 20-foot putt uphill. Our green was probably rolling 9 that day. And I'm like, take this putter. And he said, man, this thing feels terrible. I'm like, it's not about that, man. Just put the ball in that loop, keep your head still and hit this ball. 20 foot straight uphill. I promise you that ball didn't go 7 feet. Like he took that putter back about 6 inches and whacked it.
Enough backstroke.
Exactly. So we stood out there, and then he figured it out and lengthened his stroke out. And I mean, then he went out and played. You know, he's a member at the club, and he plays up here all the time. He came up playing a club event with a guy named Pig, and they were all like, "Oh my God, Boo's putting is incredible!" Like just because he goes, "Man, my backstroke's taking like an hour, dude." Like, but you know, stuff like that. That's you got to sometimes think outside the box because these tour guys, there's a few of them that are technical, but most of them are athletes, man.
Right. Yeah, I've seen you throwing together some crazy training aids.
Yeah.
Strapping water bottles to Stallings' right arm. And...
Yeah. I'll do whatever it takes, man. You know, I'm looking for something that gives them a different feel.
You still using the weight that you were?
Oh yeah, that thing's badass. It'll pull your pelvis way back. That was
talk about that a little bit.
I had this teaching Vicky Hurst, and her butt kept coming in, and I got thinking about it. So I thought, well, if I get a short shaft and put like a 5-pound weight on the end of it, and she hangs it down and swings it back, she can't pick that thing up. You know, she can't, because she liked to pick it up and like lean her spine forward and, you know, not load her right side of her pelvis right. So I was laying in bed one night kind of thinking about it like in the middle of the night. I don't sleep very good. I woke up and I decided like in the middle of the night I'm thinking about this. I said, I'm going to go get like because I have tons of old shafts I pulled out of my club repair. So I just went and got an old shaft and cut it and made it about 2 feet long, and then took it, and then I rode down to Home Depot and I found a piece of threaded pipe, you know, that was threaded that I could run through it that was just a little bit longer. So I ran this threaded pipe through there, and then my next stop, and I bought a bunch of nuts and washers, and then I rode over to Academy, and I bought a 5-pound weight and a 2-pound weight, just little plate weights. And I screwed that 5-pound one on the end of it, and, you know, took the 2-pound one too, just in case the 5 was too heavy. And I just took it back to my bay and tried it, and I mean, it worked unbelievable to teach somebody how to load their pelvis straight in the right leg and not let their butt come in and pick the club up. But the 5-pound was way too heavy. Like the 2 pounds, the 2 pounds almost too heavy. It's like a 1 pound would really be right. I mean, it's on the end of a shaft like that. But yeah, and I got it laying over in my indoor studio. I use it all the time when I get somebody in there, and especially somebody like that wants to pick it up and throw it out in front of them and not, you know, swing it and load and make their pelvis. And you can't, trust me, you can't suck your butt in with that weight on there. You'll fall over on your face.
I love it. Oh my gosh. You got all this technology and then you use a stick and a weight.
Yeah. Well, you know, you're just trying to get somebody to get a feel. And training aids work okay. You know, you know how it is. You strap it on them and it's like, yeah, that's kick ass. And then you give them the club and they do the same thing, you know.
Right.
But
so talk a little bit about Body Track and stuff that you learned. I guess it's been several years since you started using that. I know your philosophy's changed a lot because we talked about it.
Yeah.
Do you still believe in some of the stuff that you were finding or seeing your players do? I know you're using Swing Cat now too, right?
Well, I've had a Swing Cat forever. I just kind of got in bed with the Body Track guys for a while. Yeah. Just because the thing is, I actually do care about teaching pros getting better. And, you know, I mean, I can buy a Swing Cat plate, but the one I got's the 3D one, of the thing's like $25,000 or something. You know, the average guy that's trying to be a better teacher on the end of the range, he ain't got $25,000 to buy a pressure mat. So, you know, I don't know, that when that thing came out, it was like $2,000 or something. So I just thought the price fit the average club pro where he'd have some technology to give him some credibility. It's, you know, it's obviously a good little tool. It's not super accurate, you know, compared to like, but it's better than nothing, you know, to show the movement pattern.
Yeah, I like it.
But, you know, it's affordable and it's portable. So it's got some, and really, originally I bought a Body Track from my putting studio just to have people stand around on it. And then I got using it. I thought, man, this thing's pretty cool. You know, and I just bought it like everybody else, my first one. And then I kind of helped those guys a little bit. And I don't do anything with them anymore. I do way more with Swing Cat. I've got an indoor studio that has a Swing Cat 3D plate and then a gears in there. And, I mean, the pressure stuff, Mike Granado, that is that AMG golf guy, he and Sean Webb. Well, Mike works with me here in Cartersville, and he teaches out of my indoor studio a bunch. And he's taught me a lot about pressure. He actually really got me going on it. And I mean, there are some things that are definitely kind of keys in pressure, but there's not, I'm telling you, in the pressure shifts, there's not one correct pressure shift.
Yeah.
Because
more refined. There's so many ways to
do
it.
Well, and the good thing about the plate I have now shows those 3 ground forces, and everybody kind of normally has a superpower. There's not a lot of Justin Roses out there that peak the horizontal, peak the torque, and peak the vertical. Take somebody like Boo, he has 0 horizontal, and he just runs the torque through the roof. He spins around a circle. And somebody like, Stallings, he jumps out of the ground a whole bunch and has tons of vertical. I mean, and, guys that lean it a bunch are going to have a backup in their trace. I don't really care what club they're hitting. Their irons are even going to have some backup in them. Where in the beginning, I thought everybody's iron trace used to go forward. And, like when I was running a body track, I used to think guys need to get 90, 80, 90%. The average guy that really hits it good is about 72, 74% of their pressure on their lead foot at touch, so.
Yeah, that's what's changed. That's so cool, because you're evolving just like we are when you get better measurements, more data, and you start seeing some different things. But I did like the fact that you talked about the timing of the swing, and then you talked about how much, once they got into the lead foot, I think it was like 10 to 15% was sort of your.
Yeah, I mean that's a straight off something I learned from Mike that he taught me, was that the golf shot clock, which the thing is that made a lot of the other stuff I already did make sense to me, but basically tour guys have 0.96 of a second. By the time on from address to touch, from address to over your head to touch the ball is 0.96 of a second. From address to left arm parallel, you burned up 50% of that. Top of your swing, you burned up 75% of it. And when your lead arm's parallel to the ground, on the downswing, you have 0.08 till touch. So where that correlates with the pressure mat is what I like to see most of the time, and I do see it with really good ball strikers like a Joe Duran or a Boo or Will Claxton before he was hit or hurt, somebody like that stripes. I mean, they're standing, when that lead arm's parallel to the ground on the downswing, they've got, I mean, they're only going to move somewhere between 2 to 10% of their pressure of the lead foot from that point. So, right, yeah. In other words, they're standing over there on it on their lead foot balance. The whole foot's on the ground, then they deliver the club face. It makes the club super stable. You get some kid in there and they're running over there and lead arm parallel on the downswing and they're moving 35, 40%. They hit the ball all over the yard,
Yeah, the face is super stable.
100%. Yeah.
Do you find that on Swing Cat to where they start to go vertical at that point? Or?
Yeah. The guys that are really good at stopping it, like running down and stopping it, and then they'll shoot out of the ground down there before touch, I
had James Lights on the show last night, and he's using the S2M2 dual force plate.
Yeah.
Amazing, and he talked a lot about that.
Yeah, that's perfect for James. He loves that stuff. He's a good dude, isn't he?
He's a great dude.
Yeah, no, that guy's way smarter than me, man.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, it's just, you take that and then you start watching that stuff on that gears and how the body works. It kind of all ties together. And really the thing with me is when I buy technology, the problem with technology is the engineers make it and then they'll get in bed with one instructor and they'll buy in because they don't know anything about teaching golf. And then they start teaching that one guy's method, Sure. And, Swing Cat was super guilty with it with, a couple of their guys where, the thing when I buy technology, I have such a great database. I just run the stuff for a while and just watch it and see what the parameters are that the tour guys do it in.
Yeah,
And
what
that's
are the correlations?
yeah,
the patterns.
100%. I'm not, and I love Neff, but Neff hates forward lean. Well, guys lean it, we get him on gears, and the Mike Adams, he's got his own jargon of the spinner, flipper, whatever that business is, which
Launchers.
And he's a good instructor, but it's just, I don't really see it like that. What the main thing I'm trying to do is I'm trying to take some of the best players in the world and I'm trying to make them 5% better. I've never taught one pattern. I try to teach the people strengths. I'm trying to clean up what they don't need in there. Most of the time, I'm not adding anything. I'm taking stuff away.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to clean up, the unnecessary movements and make the pattern more efficient that they already have.
So have you had any players that take it back inside, don't get on the elbow plane at like 2 or 3, and you've left them alone?
No. I've had guys like...
I was going to say, how good do they have to be for you to leave that alone?
I've just never had anybody. Here's the problem with it is if some guy swings a backswing back there and let's say he's way underneath, and the club, the problem is about, left arm parallel and the club significantly down below the elbow plane line. How do you hit? You're going to hit every wedge shot out right of the hole, or you're going to wrist roll it. It's like the club's.
Center of mass is so far
yeah, it's going to make your off-speed shots not accurate. It's just I've never had any luck. And the thing is, that golf club's so heavy when you're swinging it that then the next thing the golf club's swinging you, and you're not swinging it. So that mass is pulling you all over the place, and it just it's just. I just can't think of anybody I've ever had that's had a really whacked up backswing that I haven't tuned it up, right or wrong.
Like an old Ricky Fowler where the club's on the other side?
Oh, yeah, I have tons of those. That doesn't bother me that much. Vertical to shallow guys.
Little Matty Wolf.
Yeah, I don't mind that, that guy, I wouldn't know. I'm friends with GG. I wouldn't know what to do with him. I'd have just screwed him up, man. That's why GG's so good for him, because he loves that pattern,
Right. So, speaking of gears, go into the few things that you noticed that you liked your players doing based on the data that you collected.
Yeah,
Give us a little synopsis of that presentation you did at my summit.
Yeah, I'll just give you a rundown on, I always tell people when I do these things, kind of teaching history. Like everybody else, I started out with a handheld video camera. Then I got fixed cameras where I could look at face on down the line. That was great, where I could see both views at the same time. That I learned a ton from that. Then I got a TrackMan. I think my first thing was like a vector radar, and it wasn't any good. And then I got one of the flight scope, and then I ended up buying a TrackMan when the first portable. I was like one of the first guys with a 3E, and that was a huge when you learn about club path and face, and that was really a game changer. That TrackMan is in what happens down there in the ground and what makes the spin axis tilt the way it is, and then. 2 or 3 years ago, I got a Gears, which is like the next evolution in educating me. Because if you're a really good teacher and you're going to grow, and if you hear me speak 5 years from now, something I said I was real positive about, I might be like, nah, man, that was dumb as hell. That was no good. And I'm the first guy to admit it. I'm learning and evolving all the time on what's important to me. And I'm the first to tell you, I'm a way different instructor now than I was 5 years ago, just because you learn more and you're like, man, I was so on that, and that was so off, But the biggest thing with the gears is, and it's obviously been the biggest change in what I teach, is just because I've ran so many guys through there, and I just see what all these guys, and they look different on the range, but they really are the same. You know, they have the same things going on. And when you get somebody that struggles on there and they have a big outlier in one of these main areas, that's kind of what I always work on. So
let's go through those.
So the biggest thing that I've learned from the gears is how the pelvis and spine relationship works. And what I mean by that is what I said earlier is this. So one thing I always say when I'm doing education things is one of the first things I ask people what shot shape they hit, and then I ask them, and then I look at the video, and now I look at gears and see if what they're telling me matches up with what they're doing. And what I mean by that is if a guy comes in and he tells me he's fade bias, I expect to see a certain kind of spine pelvis movement on the gears, and if he tells me he's draw bias, I expect to see kind of a slightly different movement. And
can you go into a little more detail on that?
So really, so you take somebody like a Russell Henley or a Hudson Swafford or somebody that's pretty fade bias. They set up to it, and they're at address. Their pelvis is relatively flat, level. Their knees are bent relatively the same amount, 14, 15 degrees, I'd guess, and their spine's at 90 degrees. And when they wind up, as they get winding up, most of those guys that are fade biased, if anything, their spine tilts slightly target side. So if 90 degrees is straight up and down, then 80 degrees would be 10 degrees target side. So their spine would lean towards the target, okay? Guys that are they're draw biased when they set up and they start moving the club away, their spine either stays at 90 or goes more to the right. Starts right bending just slightly, like 1 or 2 degrees. So those guys will shift over there and be 91, 92, 93, and ride that slight right bend out. And a lot of times their right side of their pelvis doesn't get nearly as high. So a fade bias guy would jump in there, like a Hudson, he'll lean forward, he might get to 85 degrees, so he's lost 5 degrees of tilt towards the target, so he's leaning more towards the target, and the right side of his pelvis will go up to 20 degrees. And then he'll come down in there, and then he'll go into right bend about left arm parallel to the ground, and he'll bend over, and at touch, he'll be 96, 97. Okay? A draw guy...
How much is that pelvis moving towards the target? I think you talked about
the average pelvis moves about 4 inches towards the target. Okay. And when somebody, like you get somebody on a pressure mat and they've got, especially those guys where the pelvis looks like it slides out underneath them, you can see it on the video camera, that guy's probably moving 6 or 7 inches over there. Right. And they can't ever get any pressure on top of their lead foot. They can't use any mass to gain pressure. So the pelvis slides, goes running, slamming out underneath them, and they'll end up at 95, 96, 98 pressure on their lead foot, and it's not good pressure either. It's like shifted out underneath them. But so the draw guys normally in there, they're same pattern. They'll set up a level and all that. Instead of moving towards the target, they'll gain a little more right bend, 92, 93, and they'll ride that out till left arm parallel on the downswing, and then they'll jump into 102, 103 at touch, something like that. So really what the fade guys are doing is by leaning forward, all they're doing is slowing down the right bend. So the right bend, so they're starting the downswing more straight up and down, so they can't really get to the 100. They can stay at 95 or 6, so they're not, so you'll stand up and lean forward and swing your arms. You can see it's a fade bias downswing. And if you lean to the right and stand up and lean to the right and you swing your arms, it's way more end to out. So 100%. So that they're using their spine to affect that, how that club comes out of the top and goes around them. So
it doesn't have anything to do with rotation either, right?
Mm-mm.
We're not even talking about the rotary part.
No, the thing that's, and a lot of times anymore, I find myself, especially when somebody's shifting pattern looks off, like their pelvis isn't moving, we start taking bend out of the right knee, so the average guy on the backswing, right-handed golfer, they lose about 6 degrees of knee flex in their right knee. And that's what lifts the right side of their pelvis up. Now, everybody's right side of their pelvis goes up in the air. Every single one of them. And they all have the same pattern where it goes up, levels out about left arm parallel, and then they go into right bend. Yeah.
I was going to say that was what I found interesting too. Was one, I love the analogy you talked about of going downhill, which I think gets them into that left pressure shift earlier. But when the pelvis levels out was important, right?
It's super important. So who I see it with all the time are females because they're so hypermobile. Like, you get a lady, like a college girl on the gears, man, they can turn and spin around so much more. Like Jane Park, who's an LPGA girl, when I started teaching her, she would swing the club back. She would add knee flex. It looked pretty good going back, and then she'd squat and bend both knees. So then she's leveling her pelvis back up.
So too early, right?
Her arm would be way up over her head, and her pelvis was level. Early, right? Yeah, way too early. So then all she could do was spin around in a circle and stall, and then she had tons of flip down there at the bottom. So, we straightened her right leg a whole bunch, got it up, and all we're really trying to do is stall out when she leveled out. We're trying to make it later in the downswing. And we've got her down to, almost left arm parallel now. And she played unbelievable last year. She just started putting decent at the end of the season, but her ball striking was tremendous and her compression was up. And she had all that, that obvious throw you could see on the video camera where the club wrist rolled real hard past the head. So that's such an important, real important thing is when that pelvis levels out. And a lot of times, we'll just make the right side of the pelvis go higher just so there's farther to go before you level out and your arms can get down more. Because a lot of times when you get somebody in there struggling, they'll jump in there and the right side of their pelvis go up 6 to 7 degrees. And immediately it's not enough,
So what else have you found?
That's the main thing. Like I was in a car because I've had 2 or 3 of these people lately. Then I don't know the answer to this, but like I always have things, and that's where it's great having Mike because he's so good at looking at all the data that we have. Is the thing I'm interested in now is I've got 2 or 3. I got a girl that plays at UNC Charlotte. I've got Cheyenne Woods and then this Tiffany, and they make that move where they swing it up to the top, and one of the last things they do is take the tilt out of the shoulders. And what I mean by that is if you think somebody like Justin Thomas, when he's at the top of his swing and you drew a line from like his right shoulder joint to his left shoulder joint, that line would be pretty inclined down at the ball, right? Sure. Well, I've got 2 or 3 of these girls that I see right now where they swing it up there and then they level their shoulders at the top.
Shoulders get flat.
Yeah, flatten their shoulders out and their pelvis comes in underneath. And the minute they do that, like you can feel it if you do it, you start sucking your pelvis in underneath you, and then they flatten it. They get these really super low vertical swing planes on a TrackMan. And, it's not compressed. So and I called Mike and talked to him about this because we have so much data. I want to go through there and start looking at that angle and start paying attention to more of that side bend and keeping that in there and how important it is because, like, I've never worked on that a ton for somebody that humps it. But, I mean, you're a good teacher. You know how hard it is to work on a hump. I think there's a big part of that shoulder tilt that's going to help me a bunch with that, and I'll get back with you after I study this a little bit.
Yeah,
that's going to help me a bunch with because like you take Cheyenne, she swings it up there and it looks pretty good going back, and then she flattens her shoulders and the club lays way off. Like the last move, if you look at her videos I've got on Instagram, they lay way down, and then it's like there's no hit down on the back of the golf ball, and they get swipey and cutty.
Do you, when you see something like that, do you start to adjust their arm plane, hand height, like that, the old school 1 plane, 2 plane stuff would say, well, you need to have a higher hand position at the top, which if you have a flatter shoulder plane.
Yeah, I mean, on the range it was with Cheyenne, just yesterday. And, one thing I tried to give her was more of like the first thing I tried on her, just because I was trying to give her a fix for the week, was just if she sucked the club head way in, kind of got off playing on her backswing and made her picked up some across the line to get her lead shoulder down. But it wasn't a good golf course swing thought. Like, she could hit some decent drives, but it wasn't any good. So then the second thing that we did that we had a lot more success with is she just felt like that her lead shoulder was way down lower under her chin, like there was separation between her chin and her lead shoulder, and it cleaned the top up. It didn't get it exactly in the window up there, but it got it into her right forearm, which if she gets close, then she has way more compression on the shot. So, it's just...
What's her club path numbers? How big does it get into out?
It doesn't get into out. It gets out to in. She gets swiped. She gets down and way across it. Like, she'll swing like a 5 and 6 swing direction because she lays it down, and then it comes in from a real low place, like laid off at the last minute, and then she swipes across.
I was going to say she'd have to flip it and go into super lead wrist extension to get path left from there.
Yeah. So
get that crossover a little bit earlier.
So, that's kind of stuff. But, that's kind of my next deal that I think me and Mike are going to jump into and see But what's cool about having the data is when I have these ideas, we can go in there and look at a bunch of really people that stripe and go, okay, here's kind of the parameters they do it in. Right. And I don't know the answer to this question right now. I should know it in a couple of weeks after we work on it a little bit. But, as we've used this thing, when we first got the gears, I'm like, I don't know how useful this thing is, but it's unbelievable now. Like, it's an MRI. Like, I can send somebody in there and do so much on them. And a lot of times I tell the player, I'm like, man, this is way more for me than it is for you. This tells me what to tell you. This tells me what to concentrate on and what to work on.
How often do you put your guys on that? Because I know it's probably not an easy thing to hook them up and...
We've done it so much, man. We got it down now. Like,
really?
Mike kind of does the sensors on the club. We always do it together. I put the suit on the people, and we've got it down. We know it's a very fickle piece of technology, but we've got all like the troubleshooting stuff down. So the things ran really great for us for 8 months now. For the first 2 years we had it, hell, a guy might ride over, we might not get a capture on the thing.
Right.
We figured out kind of all the heartache with it. So it's honestly, we can knock somebody out of that thing. There's a lot of times it's way less than 20 minutes now, because you only need to hit a handful of shots on it. And, we'll have them set it in live mode and have them make swings, and you can just see how much they're changing. It's an unbelievable piece of technology to teach anybody on. It would be great for any instructor if you could afford to have the thing.
Right.
And, that kind of technology, like I bought one of those 4D things. Have you got one of those?
I had a couple of sensors. I haven't got the full 6 or 12. I'd like to have it for putting.
Yeah, that's why I bought it.
I've worked with it.
I bought it for putting, and I ain't done dick with it yet, but I need to spend some time with it. But, it's portable, it's cheap, compared to like a Gears. So, they're definitely... There's technology on the horizon. I imagine in 10 years from now, there's not going to be a sensor on anybody's body, and it's going to be some of that camera stuff like the military use. I rode on a plane one time with some guy, and he goes, yeah, man, down the road, we got stuff where they can run this grid up your body and measure all that stuff in a space. I'm like, well, I'm ready for that, because that'll be way easier,
Next frontier.
Yeah.
I think VR is going to come into play here real soon.
Yeah, I can see that for sure, But, I'm trying to think of the other things that we use. The bulk of the time we're using the gears, it's the one thing, too, we use it a lot for is when the club looks like it's trailing behind somebody. It's like, man, this is a really good golf swing, but the club is behind them. Is that what's interesting is you take somebody like Rory. So if you can imagine the sensor that runs, from I think it runs from your left elbow up to your left shoulder, across to your right shoulder, and it measures what your lead arm's doing. Well, the average guy, let's say he's set up there and that number's 88 degrees. The average guy that's really good's lead arm's coming off their chest through the hip 4 or 5 degrees. So, it goes up to like 95, 96, where somebody that's struggling, that arm's trailing behind them, it's if they start at 88, it's less. It's more behind them than where they started. And
Really?
that has a lot to do with, so a guy like Rory, he probably turns his shoulders to 100 degrees, but his arm only goes up to 75. So it's the distance where you don't get that runoff out of the top that allows you to get your arm out in front of you, where for years I'd always try to get people to swing the arm out, in front of them, give them like a shaft in their left arm and have them swing it faster or something, try to pull that arm off of them. But now you see it has way more to do with how the relationship between the shoulder turn and how deep the lead arm gets on the backswing. So, we'll measure that and work on that a bunch with those people. And that stabilizes the club face a whole bunch through the hit.
Yeah, I mean, the thorax-torso relationship and the lead arm is huge.
Yeah.
The way they load it or unload it.
Exactly. I mean, and that's a complicated one to work on, but,
sure,
you can see when you get guys like, have them make a big shoulder turn, shorten their arm swing up, and then throw some pressure in there so it happens sooner to speed that up. That, it's that combination of using the technologies there that helps with that more than anything.
What are some of your favorite drills or your go-to drills for full swing? You got any that jump out more than others?
Most of the time when I'm really trying to change, like I'm working on a little girl that plays at UGA right now, and I literally do a whole bunch of, I'm kind of a talent code guy. Like I read that book years ago, and
oh yeah, me too.
I try to make people build that myelin and make those slow patterns and make it perfect, and then try to add speed to it, and then back and back off. And so most of my things are like part pause drills and get them a feel and I always feel like if I can get somebody to leave and make a perfect golf swing that I think is perfect for them, and I don't care what speed they can do it at least they can do it, and then try to ramp speed up. But I don't have a million drills I do with people. It's kind of whatever the problem they have that I'm working on, and then I'll cut it down and make it slow as that. I only want them to do it as fast as they can do it, And it's like I had a little girl, Alice Chen, come in the other day. Did you see that Instagram post I put up of her where I'm like, okay, this girl's going to be an accelerated learner? And she stood out there and was like float loading that iron and thumping it. And I mean, she's hitting the ball like it's slow motion swings, and she made all these part swings. Well, I know that girl's going to get better. But like the person that won't make the off-speed swing for you, they're not going to get any better.
Yeah, I love that. I do that a ton in my teaching, which is a lot of delivery drills and slow motion pump drills and I call them three-quarter straight arms.
Yeah.
So little swings where they can control the bottom of the swing, then they have a chance.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I mean, the thing is, changing a pattern, like a lot of times, I'm like, man, am I doing this person any good? And then you'll look back at one of their first swings you saved, and you're like, oh my God, that's so much better. Like, we're getting there. It's just, people show up, tour guys show up, and I would love to give somebody like the magic fairy dust. And, and these are tour players that they leave, and like the next week they win. I mean, it honestly, it takes 6 months at minimum to make any big changes on somebody. If they're really good and, you're teaching Charles Howell and you're kind of working on a few things and they hit it, that's one thing. But if you got somebody where you're really making a pattern change, that takes some work.
This episode of the Golf Guru Show is brought to you by InVeedHemp.com. As golfers, the game creates wear and tear on your body and mind. InVeed CBD products can organically rejuvenate you. They come in 3 varieties: Relief, Clarity, and Relax. Relief CBD products help relieve pain. Clarity allows you to focus on those critical shots. And Relax CBD products are for those anxious golf moments. Right now, I've got an incredible special for you. Go to InVeedHemp.com and use the promo code GURU20 for a 20% discount for life. Let's get back to the conclusion to this awesome conversation with Scott Hamilton. Yeah, we are back.
And the thing about it is, like, you always want to be able to do that fairy dust. As well as I do, you can't do it. Like Peter Uihlein, I worked on him all year, and he had that heavy playing schedule. But, and it's a little of it with a tour guy, like is figuring out his combination of stuff he does where he likes to open club face. I normally have more square club faces and stuff like that. But, he just came up here a few weeks ago for a couple days, and it was amazing. Like, first of all, he understood all my, like, redneck dialogue. So it's, a little of when you go to a new teacher is, as a student, is like, what the hell are they talking about? This guy called that.
Sure.
And so then he kind of understood me, and we had a decent base to work with, where before he was just kind of, when he got there, the driver was really bad. So, he'd had a little bit of success. He had a top 10, and he was starting to drive it better. And he showed up, and then we were on the same page, and it was way closer to what it needed to be, and it was just a really better session. So.
Well, you were doing a lot of work with him just through video, right?
Yeah.
Like you didn't get to see him. How does that work?
Well, I got to see him every week on the PGA Tour.
Oh, okay.
But, it was, it's just, you couldn't measure anything besides a TrackMan and, like,
sure.
A video. So, and we had some significant, body changes we were going through to get him, more, you jump on a pressure mat the first time, you're like almost 80 on your lead foot, and you're adding a bunch of knee flex with your right knee on your backswing, and the club's coming out way steep, and you start shallowing that thing around him and trying to get him more 50-50, and and then it's just like that gentle, trying to keep the guy playing good enough to keep his tour card.
I was going to say, how tough is that with
That's
him
really,
trying to play through it?
It's really tough, man.
Yeah.
He did a great job. He got frustrated a few times, but I mean, guy did a great job, man. And I think he's really close to getting it all figured out. And also, I'm close to getting figured out what to tell him to make him better,
Yeah, just keeping him around, right?
Yeah, so he's, he's playing. We'll see how it goes. By the time this thing gets finished, it'll be over with. But he's down to Bermuda this week, so we'll see how he plays down there.
That's so cool.
See what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. So you ready for a few personal development questions? We'll
Sure.
wrap up.
Yeah.
Let's go with, I got a couple that I want to give you that were a little different. This ought to be a good one. So what is an unusual habit or absurd thing that you love? Aside from Bud Light.
Well, I mean,
well, you're not drinking now, which is
well, what happened to me on my drinking deals is I eat pretty good, but I like to drink a little bit, and I got a little health deal, and I went to the doctor and to get some antibiotics, and they got the real scale at the doctor's office. They don't have the one you get at the Walmart that's over there in your bathroom. And, let's say I had all my clothes on, and let's say I had really heavy shoes on. But I jumped on that scale.
I hate that.
Like, oh my God. So I've kind of laid off the alcohol here I've been since October the 13th. That's a pretty good run for me. So
that's awesome.
I'll see how long I can do it. I've got it, I can't afford any new clothes, so I got to make this stuff I got work.
There you go.
But
so what habit wouldn't we know about you that is a little bit off? Usually I always say, what would your wife tell me if I ask her?
Quit dipping. I don't have too many crazy habits. The thing, I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur. My wife and I own a lot of stuff, and, we have a commercial fencing company. She owned 2 huge retail stores that we sold last year.
Yeah, I don't think most people know that about you.
Yeah,
as much time as you spend on tour, you got a lot of stuff going on.
We got some rental houses, and we've always been entrepreneurs, Lisa and I. So I spend a lot of time. I got a couple interesting things going on right now. I'm opening up with a partner. I bought a building in a short sale maybe 4 years ago, and we're opening up the first local brewery in Cartersville called Drowned Valley.
Oh, nice.
Pictures up on Instagram. And then I'm involved with a bunch of I'm the broke guy in the group, bunch of heavy hitters in Atlanta. One of my partners is Matt Shire that owns Scofflaw and brewery, and we're opening up a distillery. So I've got 2 alcohol things going right now, but
there you go.
I'm in good company on that distillery deal. This brewery is going to be really cool. They just put the furniture in it. We've been working on it for a year, I think. So it's just, they're making beer down there right now. So I'm excited for my little town to have its first brewery.
That's awesome. Let me know if you need any testers.
Oh, yeah, 100%. We're gonna,
I'll be down.
We're going to need all kinds of testers. So, I mean, I got to knock this weight off before I kick that brewery open.
That's right.
We should be open, like, I'd think the first week in December or something, maybe.
Sweet.
Yeah, so I got that going on. But, yeah, I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur. I'm dyslexic. So, I can read and retain things, but I'm a slow reader, so I was always kind of more of a math-based guy. I'm better with a calculator than I am but I love to read, but it's, I struggled in school with the dyslexia.
I had a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, so makes you solve problems differently.
It does, yeah. Things get twisted up in your head. I know what that feels like. What speaking of books, do you have any favorite books that have influenced your life or your career that you can remember?
And I read all kinds of books. I don't read many fiction books. I think the last fiction book that I read was A Time to Kill one time when I was stuck somewhere, and it was the only book there.
Great movie. 20
years ago. But, probably the best books, people ask me this all the time, some of the best books that I've ever read, and I try to read things that kind of help me with my job, but the book Grit is, anybody that hadn't read that book, Grit, is incredible, especially if you're raising children. I'd think it'd be a great book to read, but it's also, that Angela Duckworth wrote that book. It's unbelievable. Mm-hmm. I love, obviously we talked about the Talent Code. And
right,
then,
it's a good one.
All the Malcolm Gladwell books, David and Goliath and all the other ones, the Outliers, and those are all, it kind of explains stuff to you, and you read those books kind of that you don't think about. There's a book called Brain Rules that talks about this guy that did all this brain mapping and how you store memories and stuff that was really good. I like that book a lot. And then one of my favorite books I ever read was this book called Spark.
I've heard of that.
It was a book about this gym coach that won like an old heart monitor back in the day, and it had changed how he taught a gym class. And then, it was back when they think that your brain would regenerate itself, and that, he'd do these aerobic, he paired with some teachers in the I think it was in Illinois, they were in kind of a rural school, and he paired with the teachers, and he would find out whatever the kids had trouble in their worst class, and he'd do these aerobic gym classes. Because gym class, you think when we were kids, or I was anyway, you play kickball or things like, most of the time you're just standing around.
Right.
Well, he turned his into
so let's take a short break to hear from one of our sponsors.
And then he'd have the kids take the most difficult class they had next, and it was unbelievable, like the ability to learn and retain after that. So that book's really fantastic. But yeah, I got a ton of them.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
No, thank you for that. It's difficult. I've been on the other side of these podcasts, and I always forget. I've read hundreds and hundreds of stuff, and you're just like, okay,
yeah,
I need to start writing it down.
A lot of times, people ask me questions, and then later on, I'll listen to the podcast and go, "Man, I should have answered that way different."
I know, we all do that. So here's a good one. Now that you're on your no alcohol, when you feel overwhelmed or unfocused or sort of lost your focus temporarily, what do you do?
I like to get by myself, like I can go hang out. I room with Tillery a lot, but I room by myself a lot. And, I just like to go zone out a little bit and get in the corner and kind of think things through. A lot of times if, in business and other things, if I can just get off by myself and work through the problem, the whole thing, I can solve it somewhere or another. But it's just like, I think it came from me and being dyslexic in college. I wasn't ever the guy that went to the library and hung out with everybody. I was the dude that hid like in a closet to read. I've got to have some quiet to really focus.
Sure.
And it's weird. Like I solve a lot of my problems when I wake up in the middle of the night. Like I guess I'm thinking about it, like teaching problems.
Do you keep a journal or write it down or put it in your phone or what?
I've written notes. Like if something's super important, I've got out of bed before and got a piece of paper and written it down, like I need to remember that. But a lot of times I think about it so much that I carry it right over in the morning. But yeah, that's, the first time I realized that was kind of would work for me when I was a kid. I was raised on kind of out in the country in Missouri, and I swapped a guy a shotgun for a car, but the car had been taken all apart, like it was in pieces. So I went and picked this. It was a '66 Chevy too, and I didn't know anything about putting a car back together, but I figured I could do it because I did everything else on a farm. So I brought this car back, and my grandfather kind of knew how to fix anything. So I was putting this car back together, and I would get stumped on what to do, and then I would figure it out like in the middle of the night, like the mechanical part on what to do. And that's where I kind of the first time I'm like, oh my God, I've been fighting that thing for I get mad as a kid, 16 years old. I'd throw the wrench across the garage and stomp out. And then once I calmed down, like at nighttime and thought about it, I'd figure out how to fix it and what to do next. So that's kind
awesome.
of how I figured that deal out.
So what does your morning routine look like? Like, is there something that has to happen for you to have a good day?
About 2 cups of coffee and a dip. I mean, my main thing, I'm not really a morning eater. Like, I like to get up and drink some coffee, and, I'm busier than I want to be, but I like to hang out with my wife in the morning and drink coffee and, watch the news a little bit, talk about what's going on. That's my mornings normally. On the road, it's, you get up so early, you normally get in the shower and head out.
Right. So everybody thinks that being a tour coach and traveling is so glamorous. What would we not know, and what would you not like about your job?
So the thing I don't like about it the most is the travel and being away, and that it's stressful because, you have, and I teach a lot of guys, like I probably have 7, I think I counted the other night, I think I have 9 guys next year. I mean, I'm taking in all their stress, and if you're good at what you do and you care and passionate about it, you're gonna absorb their stress. And when guys are not playing good and stressed out, I mean, it feeds into you, and you carry that and think about it all the time.
Sure.
I haven't been to a tour event in years, but like my fantasy would be, sometimes I'm at a tour event and I'm walking around and, and me and Tillery will get whining to each other every once in a while, pretty sad. But you'll look over and the 3 guys that are there together hanging out, drinking beer, eating a hot dog, and really don't give a damn if a guy plays good or not. They're just watching who's playing good. I would love to one time have no ownership and go to a tour event, drink beer, walk around and not care,
Yeah.
Go to Augusta and get my cheese sandwich and stand around and, just have fun. Yeah. I've never done that.
Yeah. Well, guys like me are envious of you and want to be on the other side.
Yeah, I'm not going to knock it. It's been a great job for me. I meet a lot of great people. I mean, it obviously pays better than running the member guest, and I mean, there's a lot of rewards to it of the connections I have. And what's weird is, like, the better you do in this business, the more free stuff they give you, where you used to have to buy every training aid, or technology was expensive, and now people just want to ship me stuff that I could afford to buy it. So it's it is weird. It kind of works reversed.
Yeah, that's the way tour players are, right? They're making all that money, and then they get everything for free.
Yeah, if it's free, get 3. That's the motto out there.
That's awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for your time, man. We're going to do one more question. Okay. And if you listen to the show at all, you're going to know it's coming. But if you could have a gigantic billboard and get a message out to the world, billions of people, what would you put on your billboard and why?
I would probably tell people, I'd say, be a rational thinker. That's what drives me crazy about the world is there's no room for moderation anymore. It's like you don't have to buy 100% in one way or the other. It's like the thing the best people in the world to be around are people that, like, when you're on a board or something, it's like they haven't already determined their answer before they get there. No matter what you tell them, they listen to the information that's given to them, they evaluate it, and then they make a decision. And a lot of people like that you get around, and it happens to me all the time where I really have an opinion about something, and I tell them, what I think, and they tell me back, and I go, yeah, you're right on that. I was wrong. Like, or I get your view, but it's like nobody appreciates anybody else's view. It's like these politics now. There's no room for like the middle. Like that's what makes me so sad about Washington D.C. is that nobody can shift or do the best for mankind. It's all the best for the Democrats or the best for Republicans. Well, a lot of times, it's like the gun control business. I got a room full of guns over here at my house, but I don't need a AK-47 or a magazine that holds 22 bullets. I mean, there's some moderation in there, man.
That's right. Yeah, there's a middle ground.
Yeah, so that would be my deal. Just like let's kind of think this through a little bit and try to make it work for everybody.
I hear you, man. Well, that's awesome, man. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your information. Let everybody know how they can follow you, because I think your Instagram page has gotten pretty hot.
Yeah.
After you've started posting your players finally, as we talked about that.
My Instagram is Scott Hamilton Golf. And that's the only thing that I update. We were talking about website earlier. I've actually have a little girl I teach, Kayla Jones, that played at Florida State, and she's got an injury right now. And she's like all the young kids, she's a computer wizard. So we're going to modernize my website. She's going to help me and put more videos of what we do and more interactive video stuff. So we're getting ready to remodel that thing. So don't even go on there. It stinks. Give me a couple months on that. But like Instagram I don't do Twitter. I don't spell good enough to be on Twitter, man. I tried it for a while. I like pictures with little bitty captions underneath them. So Instagram's the best bet.
That's awesome, man. You're the best.
No, I appreciate it, man. It's great to get to talk to you for a little bit. And sorry for my computer failure early on.
That's okay. We got it done. Absolutely. Well, I'll hopefully catch up with you soon, and I'll buy you a beer once you start drinking again.
Sounds good, bud. Trust me, I'll be back.
I know you will. Thanks, brother. Thanks for everything.
See you, man. Bye.
What's up, everyone? Guru back here again with a couple of things before you jump off. First, big thank you to Scott for coming on the show and sharing his incredible knowledge about teaching and life that I know will help all of you become better coaches and better human beings. Make sure to follow Scott on the gram at Scott Hamilton Golf. You can go check out all his players' swings, which is awesome. And he also gives some great feedback and drills there as well. And is easy to get a hold of, as he'll comment most of the time. So give him a social wave and say thank you for all the great information that he shared. Thank you again to our sponsors, InVeedHemp.com. And make sure you go use the promo code GURU20 for your 20% discount for life. And also to Hack Motion, the wrist sensor training aid. Thank you so much for your support as well. You can follow and reach me on Twitter or Instagram at GolfGuruTV. That's at GolfGuruTV. And make sure you go to the App Store and download the Golf Guru app for all the golf information that you'll ever need to get better as a player, and for you coaches out there as well. Also, check out my website at golfgurutv.net, where you can find videos, articles, and more information on my teaching and coaching. And if you have a question or a comment, you can email the show at golfgurushow@gmail.com, or just hit me up on the DM. I appreciate all the love and the DMs that I get from people listening to the show. Keep spreading the word. It's awesome. I will keep putting them out as long as you guys keep listening. This show and all episodes of the Golf Guru Show were produced by myself, and music was by Zach Mullet, a.k.a. Cutta Beats. And as I always leave you with, what I live by: study, practice, teach, and then pass it on. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks again for listening.